2025 Capital Program Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, March the 4th. We'll start our regular meeting as we'll call the meeting to order. So the meeting's been called to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 17, 2026 meeting. If you've had an opportunity to review, if you ask for a motion, we got a motion by Mona, second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Thank you for being here, Joe Tobert. Okay, next item on the agenda, we'll review and discuss the survey results. And I think we're turning to Trudy.
Good evening, everyone. So we have got some fun technology hoops that we're jumping through right now, but that's okay because you all have handouts of the presentation. So at your places, you do have a copy of the handout of the presentation. And so we're going to work off of that so that we're not delayed in going over the information that we prepared for you all this evening. As you all know, we did another survey following the last meeting, and so we're going to go over what those results are. I think a few of the agenda items will be covered all at one time as we go through the presentation. So as always, we want to start with our end goal in mind and reminding everyone, sort of who benefits from these projects. And so your second slide there really goes through just sort of the word cloud that we had last time that shows, who all is benefiting from the projects that you all are considering and that we're discussing together as a group. And at the heart of that, of course, is going to be our, there it is. Okay. We're working. I was going to Vanna White it. It was going to be fine. Okay. Good job. Very good. I was ready. Okay. So again, starting sort of with our end goal in mind and who is it that benefits from these projects. At the heart of that certainly are our residents, also businesses, families, so on and so forth. And then we also want to be reminded of how many people are coming to and through the city, not necessarily people who live here, but people who enjoy the types of quality of life options that we offer here. So we have over 1 million visitors that come here per year to visit many of these locations, not to mention the 200,000 people who visit our library each year. And so with that, we're going to go into the survey results that you all provided to us. The surveys were sent out to committee members on Friday, the 20th of February. They were due on Wednesday, the 25th. We have gone through and reviewed all of the information. We're going to present information today to the group, but we also provided to you all in your stack of paperwork a copy of the comments. So anyone who's interested in reading kind of what those open comments were from the committee, you have that information as well. So we had 72% participation. We sent it out to 29 total people and 21 participated. The first question, after seeing the results from the first survey, what is the target tax rate impact you would feel comfortable with for the bond program? You can see that we've got a strong majority that's clustering at that 3 to 4 cents, really at that 4-cent range. Question number 2, having reviewed the project ranking and census data from the first survey, what is the total general obligation bond funding that you believe is most appropriate for the ballot? And you can see there that 57% was right there at the $156 million from those who participated in the survey. Question 3, after seeing the results from the first survey, what is the target funding amount you feel comfortable with for combined street construction package to be included in the ballot? So you can see by majority vote, it was at about 75 million with 43%, really close to 80 million with 38% recommending that amount. We kind of put those two together, about 81% of the responses were at that higher dollar amount. We're going to come back to streets. We're going to delve into it in this survey part, and then we're going to delve a little deeper into the street portion in just a few minutes. So survey question number 4, are there any streets above the blue line that you would recommend downgrading or removing from the list? We had one person who responded yes. The Harwood was one that was recommended. Again, out of the 21 responses, one person mentioned this street. And for question number 5, are there any streets below the blue line that you would recommend upgrading or adding to the list? We had a total of 5 responses here. 2 people said Iron Horse. One person mentioned Emerald Hills Way. And then one person just mentioned sort of 5 streets, if you will, different streets below that line. So So we're going to go into a little more detail about the streets in just a few minutes. You guys do have in front of you some print-offs of the streets. We have included the red line, the blue line, the green line that we discussed to begin with, so that as we kind of get into more of the conversations around specific streets, that you've got that information handy. But when we look at what all of the results are telling us, we sort of add all of the survey results together. From the most recent survey, we do see that it looks again like an 8 to 10 year program, GO bonds around 156 million, tax rate impact around 4 cents, street reconstruction at that higher amount, somewhere between 75, maybe 80 million, and then projects to be included. So one thing that you'll note here is for the library, because it's at 155, 156 million, that actually would include all of the library projects. We talked extensively about options on the library, but based on what the survey results are, this is what you all told us most recently that you were looking for in the bond program. We're going to stress test that a little bit as we get into the presentation. Do we have any burning questions, comments before we move on to the next section where we really are going to delve into how do we reconcile survey 1 and survey 2? To some extent, we did get some different responses.
Woohoo, library. So that includes all the library stuff with the amount that we said. Wow, pretty cool.
According to the survey. According to the survey. Okay, so this is an eye chart, I apologize, but this is when we looked at sort of the first and second survey for fire stations 2 and 3 rebuild. There really didn't seem to be change here. Everyone seems to be on board with both of the fire stations, but I'm going to gut check it. Is that accurate? Is the committee in support of both fire stations 2 and 3 moving forward for GO consideration?
Absolutely.
Am I hearing a consensus?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so now for the fun part. I'm going to tag in Caroline for this part. We've got to figure out where you all are on streets. So we've gotten different responses, so we just want to make sure we're all on the same page about that part. I'm going to pass you the microphone, Caroline. It's just a little clip on. It's already on.
Okay, so what at your seats you've got, and I know in the earlier presentations we talked about the lines, but we didn't really have it at a glance where you can see, the list, the first line being the red line, second line blue line, third line green line, and then there's streets that continue below, just showing, and there's streets that aren't even printed on these pages, so you can see, we had extensive lists for both. So we've got the green heading is the residential streets, the blue heading is the major streets. It is interesting, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the comments back during that second survey were really only about the major streets. I think that tends to be people's focus more than the residential streets. But what we're trying to do is reconcile the feedback that we got in survey 1, where there seemed to be more of an interest in going to the blue line, which is why in survey 2, the questions were focused around that blue line and whether there were any streets above it that you felt shouldn't be above it, and whether there were any streets below it that should rise above that blue line and be considered for inclusion in the project. And so with that in mind, and now looking at, because if you remember, and you can kind of see it up there, like Trudy said, it's an eye test on the screen, the total amount for the blue line was just under 70 million. And so now with the feedback that the committee may be in support of 75 to 80 million, that does give us the ability to go below that blue line. You can see the total is 84 million and some change to go to the green line on both. And so what we would like to get feedback on from you is, and with these lists in mind, is how do you feel about that? Do you still feel better about sticking with the blue line? Are you interested in going higher with the total amount?
So the 155 million allows us an opportunity, if I'm understanding, to bring up some additional streets.
Correct.
Below the blue line.
Correct.
Yes.
How far?
I was the one that did the 5 streets after because that was,
We had
that left us
capacity.
capacity, yeah, and why not? And I think, I don't know about the other stuff, but people will vote in favor of street bonds. They generally do.
So then it would be, if we are in consensus that we want to drop below the blue line, we would have to identify which streets below the blue line to bring up.
Yes, and/or what the funding level might be that you would want to consider. I think in one of the previous slides Trudy had showed it was closer to 85 million rounded up. And one of the things to keep in mind when we were first coming up with these project estimates, this is kind of what we're looking at today, what we think these projects will look like today. The 2020 bond was a total 7-year. Most of the projects were completed in 5. The longer, the more projects we have, knowing that we can only do a certain amount at a time, the further out the project gets constructed, the more expensive it becomes. And so that starts eating up the delta between the total of the cost estimate today and what it's ultimately going to cost. And I'm kind of harkening back to some of those earlier discussions that we had, the difference between 75 million and 69. Some of that discussion was, well, hey, could that be allocated to another one of the potential bond candidates, like the library? And in reality, we need somewhat, even though we have contingencies in these, knowing that we're looking at a potential 8 to 10 year bond, we do need somewhat of a buffer there between the total of the projects today and what the funding is that you want to allocate to streets. So what may make sense is, I would love to get everything above the green line on both of them, but getting your feedback tonight for what you feel like that total funding amount is that you're comfortable with, I think will help us get to a place where we can then schedule out those projects, do the math, and come back to you and show what we think we can realistically get to, with the understanding that we still have these lists. And if we're able to keep going down the lists, because we're able to do the projects more quickly or more cost effectively, then we have our marching orders as far as what the committee recommends.
What's the differential between the 155 million and bringing the amount that we could look at to bring up from the below blue line? Do we have an amount?
Well, just the pure estimates themselves are at 80, let's say 85, and I think that 155 included 85 million, and what we're missing there is the inflation that's going to.
In the bond package, I know the voters don't look at the streets, but when we put it together, we have to have the streets that we are proposing. Like if we ended up having more money, we can't go down the list more than further down than we identified that we want to work on, or is that incorrect?
And so, and I'll look to Trudy or Paulette to correct this, but we can, in the bond language, it doesn't include the streets, but in the educational campaigns, we do indicate what we're planning on.
But to answer your question, so yes, in the educational campaigns, we list the streets in the order and the streets that are within whatever funding level the committee recommended or and the council approved. If there's money left, we would go down the list. So we don't typically advertise like every possible street unless it's within that funding. But what we do say is if there's, for some reason, money left for streets, some were less than we thought or whatever, we go down in order, in the ranking order to pick up the next streets.
Right.
You can't pay for any overages.
Right.
There are simple propositions. Say fire stations came in under budget, how would they be great? They can do it for other facilities like fire stations. They can
Right.
use those funds for. Same thing for streets. I think what made me feel comfortable going with a higher amount is the facts you told us that before. We also told the voters, we think we're going to go up 4 cents. We did 0, right?
We
So
did, well, we
have the
did,
capacity.
yeah.
Maybe not all that great growth in the next 10 years that we had in the previous 7 or 8, but still,
So,
we can do more.
and we're going to dive into that a little bit more because one is we went back and looked, and I think we provided y'all a copy maybe in the email. Did we? Of the educational information that we put out last time.
Have some in the package.
Yeah, in your packets as well. But what in that packet you'll notice that what we actually said in the educational information, I think was a 0 cent. And I didn't remember that because when we first started the conversation with the bond committee in 2020, we started at the 4 cent increase. But what we did is, as the discussions went on, we added a conservative value increase. I think it was 3%. we added that it could increase, if values increase 3% at that time, over that time, it would be 0, is what we came to. So that's what you'll see in that education campaign. There's a lot of differences now, though, from 2020 to now. We've had a revenue cap that's even less than what we had before. So at that time, we had an 8% total rollback rate, meaning we could take the tax rate up to 8% without facing an election. That's now 3.5%. That changed 2 sessions ago, 3.5%. So that's limited us. And then the other thing is the amount of frozen properties continues to increase. The other thing is TAD has now gone to this every other year, which really what we learned last week from TAD is that we actually won't get properties reappraised until 2027. Yeah, so that's their 2-year because they reappraised supposedly in 25 and 24, and now so that by their math it's 27 before they'll reappraise again. So what does that mean? That means there won't be value increases on our tax rolls in that time frame. So there used to be only a 10% limit on homestead exemptions, but properties were reappraised every year. So we already saw the effects of that last year. And then the other thing is,
And there can still be protests and the values go down.
right, you can still protest every year. I'm sorry,
But
Richard.
didn't your projections, the last time we saw, you didn't increase the tax base?
That is correct, and we do have
You
some.
did it at 0
We did.
growth for the next 10
Right.
years.
Yes,
We
were
did.
very
That's
close.
true.
Yes, but we
Maybe.
do have slides a little later that are going to go into a super deep dive about things that are happening with our assessed values. For the purpose of what Caroline is wanting to make sure that we gut check with the group, because you all said you'd be willing to go to the 155, that number is associated with more money on streets than what the survey results said. So we just want to reconcile. Are you okay going past the blue line, looking at the green line? Do we
Okay.
need to talk about specific streets that maybe you want to move around so we've got a better feel from you all as a committee? How do we reconcile survey 1 to survey 2 is what we're trying to do on streets.
And so these 2 sheets, you've got these 2 sheets and you've all got a red pen. If you want to mark that up, you've also got a copy of these that's provided in your binder, so you can take one home with you. But as a supplement to that survey question, if you want to mark these up and leave them with us, that is going to help us get some of that specific feedback as far as.
Considerations below the blue line.
Right, if you want to cross out a street and say, I don't think this needs to be done, I want to do all of these. I mean,
Well, didn't we as a group, though, kind of agree to the methodology of how this ranking happened? We discussed that several meetings ago. We finally came to the conclusion as a whole, the methodology, the testing you did, the analysis by the engineers and all that stuff, that's what put them in this rank. And I don't think, well, Mark does road work, but very few in the room would have the expertise to say, oh no, this street's worse than that street. We've already got a methodology that we agreed to do, and that's what this ranking does, correct? Am I wrong on that?
Where we might pick and choose beyond, I think, would be cost. Like if you were comfortable, it's most obvious in residential. Like the third below the green line is 200,000 more. So like that's just a little bit more versus the first below the green line is 600,000 more. So I think that's where people may.
Yeah, you could draw that line and say, I don't want to go all the way to the green line, stop here.
I'm sorry. I'm with Richard, and I'm in confusion zone at this point. I don't know what we're doing. So do you want us to go to 85 million? How much do you want us to include for contingency? Your professional opinion. How much?
5 to 8,
Okay.
probably.
So, and so it's 85 million, so if we put 5, then that would be the contingency for cost overruns and unexpected events, things like that,
Would
right?
get you to 80, right?
Okay, so, and the blue line gets us to what number?
The blue line is 70.
68, 70.
So we have 10 million.
Yes.
Okay, so if we do all the way down the green line, how much is that?
Right. So, I mean, and that's where you could go, it's 11
So
point.
there's about 4 million that you need to cut out to get to 80. Am I wrong?
To get to 80, you have to cut 4 million. It's at 84 is green line, right?
That would mean she would not get her
Contingency.
But bottom line, this is not us saying that we want to go to green line, we're saying it's okay to go to green line if the money's there.
And where marking this up would come in is if you wanted to say only go to 80, take 2 off of major, that's a little over 4 mil, it's 5 million there. And that would give you the contingency and go to the green on residential.
So you're saying like 28 and 29 Holiday Lane 1 and Middle Lake?
Yeah, sure. Cut those off and that's just.
Well, no, I was just.
And it could also be, you know, given that there has been more focus on the major than the residentials, maybe the feedback is pursue the green line for majors and you stop at blue for residential. The big question tonight is what is the funding level you're comfortable with? Knowing it was 70 before and now maybe it's 80.
See, I'm with Richard here in the fact that this was all done, without any motion,
Mhm.
okay? Whereas us picking and choosing to move this one up and move this one down, you're gonna pick the ones in your neighborhood, you're gonna pick the ones you drive on all the time. That puts the emotion factor back into it. I say we go with the study results, because those are not, there's no emotion built into that. So, and then if we make it to the green, if we save money and make it to the green, great. If we run out of money when we get to the blue line, so be it. 10 years from now, we're doing this again.
Is there an interest past the blue line to focus more on majors than residential, or do we want to just keep it that roughly 75-25 split that we?
My opinion is, just like Richard said, let's stay with the people that were experts at this.
You've got 84 million down to the green with both of them. You don't have a lot of contingency. In my mind, the contingency is property values changing. Where they told us before it'd be 0. Folks, mine's 0 because I'm over 65, right? But there's vacant property still, not a lot, but vacant property is still gonna bring that tax base up. That takes care of the contingency for me.
Well, and
Think about it.
How much of us old people that are locked in now, how much of us are still gonna be here in 10 years and the house is not?
I am, and I'm tired of driving down Meadow Lakes Drive. Mona's gonna be there with me.
Those homes are gonna be with younger people who are now paying the full value.
How many can
In
afford
10
it?
years from now.
How many of the young people can afford it? That's the.
More than the media tells us.
Yeah.
Plus there's people renting
To your
out.
comment about.
What?
I would like to see us sway toward the major streets and get us more down the blue line,
On the majors?
and that's because of my personal emotion. So I'll put an asterisk there.
I'd just like to make a comment. But I'm looking at it from logistics, you know, as far as the layout of the city. If we had enough, I'm there for the major streets, but if we were able to bring anything up from the blue line on the residential, I would want to spread it out, maybe like just 3 additional ones. Maximum one towards the south end, middle, and upper end. That way each area of our city is getting some, if we add to it, if we pull from.
On the residential side?
Yeah, on the residential side, if we pull from the blue line.
Okay.
I'd like to see it be even. Spread the love. All around.
Well, and that reminds me, we haven't shown a map of where the streets are in the city, so we probably next time need to make sure we've got that so that everybody can see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
You try to spread wealth around the entire city.
Right.
Of course, the southern part is the oldest part. That's where the biggest needs are in some of the streets, just because of the age.
Right.
Why aren't you saying anything, Mark? I was really wanting to hear from you.
You know, isn't there a difference between the construction standards and what was being built in the new development versus what was built in the?
Caroline?
Yes, Yeah, I mean, the standard for the older streets. And we've invested a lot of money in the past 10, 15 years in preventive maintenance and street reconstructions in the south. So if we were to go back 15 years, things would be a lot different. We're in a lot better shape in the south now than we were before.
Our preventative maintenance program and the oversealing, whatever they call it, that's giving the life of some of these streets tremendous longer lifespan.
Yes, thank you for
I
that
mean,
whole-
tremendous amount of lifespan there. And we're not having to be on this list.
Yeah.
I have a question, and this is maybe, this is the point where, just my clarity. So let's just say at the end of the night, you get 5 of these, okay? One says move something up, one says take something out, one says keep it all, or whatever. What happens then? Do we have to go all the way back through it and?
It's just one more, to Trudy's point, it's one more gut check. The big thing I think we're looking for tonight is that funding level. And with that funding level, and with whatever feedback that we get from you, if people feel strongly about a specific street, we can come back next time with recommendations about what this would actually look like.
Back to Brianne, what Brianne said though, people are never against getting some streets rebuilt. They're gonna be for that. And if we're stretching ourselves a little bit, then I'm willing to stretch ourselves a little bit to get some extra stuff done. You got 84 million, like I said, I'll use the growth as my contingency to help offset anything like that as far as cost factors and things. But at the end of 7 or 8, 9 years, and I just think we'll find something below that green line we can still do because of the potential growth. If you say, staff, you got 84 million there, you don't have a great bit of contingency in there, but we've got rationale and reasoning why this is a good stopping point. Nobody's ever gonna get mad if we get to the end of the line and we can do one more street. Or we can do one more street, And we've done it, but let the growth take care of some of that. Instead of trying to shuffle and move, there's methodology that puts them on this list this way.
One more thing to that is, I hate to tie y'all's hands 8 years from now, when y'all are down to the last 10 million. I hate for me in 2026 to be telling you in 8 years from now, this is how you need to spend your money, because I don't know what the road conditions are gonna be there. And so I would rather you guys be able to, for example, I'm not picking on it, but like if you took off the last major street, you could do all these residentials. Basically, it's 3 million versus 3.5. And so, but I don't really want to tie your hands today. I'd rather just say we're fine with 84 million, and in 8 years, once you're at the end, if y'all.
The bottom line, I've always thought of elected officials, council. They'll recommend, council has to make the final decision.
I mean, can't we do that? That we want to do 84 million,
Yeah.
and that would cover all the way down to the green, and then we can wash our hands, and then.
Yes.
You gotta figure out where it comes out.
Take that. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that feedback, like Caroline said, and after we get your feedback on all these areas, that's what's going to happen next meeting. We're going to have some recommended, not probably proposition language, but what it would look like for each of the propositions that you can talk through again. We're going to gut check again about what that means and what that looks like.
So the service center is also one of the areas where survey results seem to be pretty consistent, that the committee seems to be in favor of moving forward with proposing a replacement for that. I'll want to confirm with the group, is that your consensus?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Everybody's raising their hand.
Okay, that's easy. Okay, next slide. All right, so another fun thing that we need to just sort of noodle over is when it comes to the library. So you all know we talked about this in terms of GOs, maybe looking at library improvements that could possibly be funded from other ways, COs, reserves, some value engineering. But again, at the 155.5, according to survey number 2, that you all would be open to consider, that actually included the total cost of all of the library projects. So we need you all to confirm to us if you really do think that all of the improvements for the library are something you'd want to propose in a GO election. Yes, sir.
One question. I see the strike through on Anna Terrace. So is the terrace taken out of that?
So the last time we presented it in survey 1, And we talked about what could be possibly changed in order to value engineer and kind of make the numbers work. The terrace at that time was proposed to be something that would come off in order for the dollar amount to work. But at 155.5, it's assumed that it's in there. So we're not really sure now, because we've gotten different results from the committee, where you all really want to land when it comes to library projects.
What was the cost of the terrace again?
Sorry, I have to
About
pull.
200,
Don't
just
remember.
about 200? 200,000.
But if we put these on the bond and voters don't approve it, then we can't do anything.
We can't issue COs,
Okay, but we can.
3 years. We couldn't issue debt for 3 years to do it.
Could we possibly find other ways to fund those, like especially the compliance, the state bill compliance, because that needs to be done. It just feels weird. It's like you're gambling. People, if they don't vote on it, then you can't use debt. Okay, if you can't use debt, are there other ways to fund it?
Yeah, so one of the things that y'all could tell us too is that maybe there's, on the library side, maybe there's a project or two that you want to put up for a GO for a vote, and maybe there's others you're saying see about using COs, which are certificate of obligation, or reserves, or some other source. So right now, though, like Trudy said, it's just, if we did the 156, that includes all of these, and that still could include all of these if you're saying, but only, let's say the community room we're going to put up for a vote, and the others utilize COs. And the reason I'm saying that is because COs are still going to add to our debt amount when we talk about that debt capacity issue. And so I guess to clarify, because I feel like I confuse Joe all the time, I don't want to confuse him this time. If there are some of these that you're saying, we think this should go up to the voters, but maybe these you seek other sources of funding. We think they need to be done, but you seek other sources of funding to do it, or something like that.
I just worry,
Yeah.
we have to become compliant with State Bill 412.
Right.
If we put it up to the voters and
Right.
they say no, we still have to do it, and we can't issue a certificate of obligation. So that being said, we have to do it. Can we use reserves to do it? And it's something that we have to do, but if the voters vote against it, and we have to do it.
Or
We're being
take it out of the
repetitive.
vote. Take it out of the vote.
Just say, that would be one that you would say, we don't want it to go to the voters, but we do think it needs to be funded, and so utilize another source.
Do you get a different rating on a certificate of obligation compared to a general obligation bond as far as your interest rate?
No.
No penalty, no nothing?
No.
So
No.
we're borrowing the same amount of money, just we're not taking the risk of something that has to be done, voters saying no.
What's the deadline for compliance on that? How does that impact, like, if we're funding it through debt?
Go ahead and ask Austin that question. And ask him what the penalty is if you don't.
Yeah,
It just needs to be done. There's a reason for it, but it just needs to be done. But you can ask him that question, but you won't get an answer.
But with the
That
law
fair
saying you have to
response?
do it, but then if it gets voted down, the law
Okay.
says you can't
Can't
use
put a penalty.
your GO for it,
Yeah.
but
Correct.
you still have to do it. Do we have other ways to do it?
Yes, it would still require, either the use of reserves, but this would probably require the issuance of either short-term bonds, I'm not using the right term, or what, there's other ways, but some of them will still involve debt, is what I'm trying to make clear. I don't want to make it some picture that we have enough reserves to fund all that. We don't. So there's going to be another debt instrument that wouldn't be a GO that would be utilized. But to your point, there isn't a monetary penalty or deadline or any kind of deadline that we're aware of. What the penalty is that state law says that our librarians can be arrested if a child is, I don't know, you explain it, because is in the area, yeah.
Our library keep in there, that we clearly designate an adult section, a children's section, but some of them intermix on the first floor. Because the tradition when our building was built was that you put your most popular collections on the first floor so that they were most accessible. And so that means we have a mix of both adult materials and children's materials. And we do have clear and adequate signage, however the law doesn't say that signage matters. And it doesn't say that we would check a book out to a child, because we don't issue cards to children without their parents' consent. But if a child were to walk into the adult area because the parent was not with the child, and the child picked up an adult book and that parent filed a complaint with the district attorney, we could be arrested and imprisoned for up to a year. So having that clear, we have to make it where it's completely isolated and separate in order to say that we have made all efforts to keep, and it could be a part-time circulation clerk who makes $10 an hour, you know, that could be arrested because they're the one that was at the desk at the time that the person who wants to file the complaint, that's the person that was at the desk.
How much does the compliance cost us out of the 22?
7.6.
7.6.
So if you took 7.6 out of that and said, go fix that with certificates of obligation, then your total package you're asking for library goes down.
Yes.
I think the reason the library in the first survey, we weren't sure we had enough money to do it, and that was the least of our priorities. Well, my eyes were open when I went and did the tour there, though. I think all of us were, of what they were doing with in the space that was required and needed. But as far as streets and stuff like that, it still hit down below the line. But now that we have the potential funds to do it, pull that 7 or 8 million out and then just ask for 14.
Okay, I did not say that we have the potential funds to do it. I did not say that.
No.
I said that we would have to issue some sort of other debt instrument in order to fund this in full. Okay. I just want to clarify. Okay.
We have the total of $155, what I'm saying is.
Oh, I got
as a
you. Okay.
potential,
Yeah.
We have the funds to do those things. You pull that 7 out, and it goes to 148.
Right.
I'm
For
rounding
what we're taking to the voters, right?
That way,
Yeah.
And you can also prioritize it.
To fix Brienne's thought, that's going to be done where the voters set it up because we need to. And I can sell that to someone. Why are you spending $7 million and vote on it? State law requires that if we don't get it done, we can't wait another 3 years for it to happen. Who'd be opposed to pulling 7 million, the right number?
I think 7.
Or pulling 7 million out of library and recommend to the council, do that with certificates of obligation, and you get your lower package then for library.
My only thing is, I would also recommend, personally, the elevator replacement. That seems like a very necessary thing that we could, do we need to put that on there?
But it's going to be moved, isn't it?
No, this would be
You're adding one?
this would be an additional elevator, and I don't know that it requires to go to the voters. If we don't fund it as part of a bond proposition to go to the voters, again, we can use another source. That one we may be able to find some reserves to fund alone. But what we had done in the beginning, I think, was put the library elevator project with the compliance. But we can actually separate those out.
My point though is, because we still think about it as 155 million, because that's the debt going in, even if it comes out of COs, it's again easier sell to voters, and that's something that needs to happen. I mean, it's.
Don't forget, we are a recommending body to the council.
Right.
And we can tell them our recommendation is, here's the total of 155, 148 is going to be general obligation bond, 7 million we recommend because of compliance issues that needs to happen for the library.
Yeah.
They may put it all together still.
Yeah. I'm just thinking down the line as a recommendation. That's personally where my head's at.
I'll bring you.
What are your thoughts around the circulation room expansion? So remember, there were 4 total projects for the library. The first was a community room. That one seemed to have absolute support. Let's look at that one moving forward. But there were 3 that were looked at as potential non-GO projects, and the circulation room is also one of those projects.
How much is the circulation room?
600,000.
This page listed 730.
Oh, is it? Am I off a little bit?
So
I wonder if it got lumped with the.
It probably got lumped, yeah.
It's surprising me that it's so much more for the compliance than it is for
The elevators listed as 1 million, and the circulation rooms listed as 735,000.
Okay, thank you.
Open the door to that circulation and show them.
Yeah.
Here's why we need this. And that might be one of the pictures you use in your information material.
Right.
You just show a picture of that.
Can I ask a question? On the library, the number of people that come through in a year that would be potential voters, because we do have people from other cities. What's our number? Do we have an idea of what the number is? I just want to make sure that when we get out there, that these voters come out and vote for it.
I can get that really easily,
Yeah,
and
'cause
I don't know what I send it to, but I can get that easily to be.
Yeah, you can, you can send.
I just have to run.
Well, we're gonna have information in other city facilities, including the library, that here's what the bond issue plan is gonna look like. Why not have, here's what's gonna happen in the library, here's what's gonna happen at Fire Station 2, with pictures and renderings and stuff to show them, here's what we're doing. That's part of the education process.
Yeah, I can get the number out in terms of the number of at least library card holders, the percentage that are NRH residents and the percentage that are not. I think the majority are residents. What's difficult is getting that number for those, for example, the Mayor Summer Reading Club folks. So some of them are library card holders, but some of them are not. And that's those are the types of things that we have, like Mayor Summer Reading Club, we have to turn people away. And also some of the events we've had to move to the Grand Hall because the room is too small. So that was just an example that we gave. So we can get you that number, but also know that more than just the number of people who hold library cards use the library. So, John.
That 200,000 number of visitors, is that door swings or is that unique visitors?
That's door swings.
Door swings, yeah.
I thought so. Okay. Thank you.
Like the author series, Cecilia.
The author series is another example, right?
Can you, yeah, when CJ Box was here last week or the week before, can you, based on registration, can you determine if those folks are library holders, residents?
They have to register for the private event, but the speaking event, which is where we get the large crowd, is open to the public, so they don't register for that.
How many people did you draw last week?
300.
Was that capacity?
You couldn't.
We had people that just had to stand in the back.
You didn't hear that, Chief.
I once again got there too late.
They know we do. They know we occasionally violate fire code. We have emergency procedures.
Okay, so I think what I hear the group saying is everyone's comfortable with the community room and that the committee may want to look at the SB 412 compliance as something to recommend to council to fund from other sources. And is that the same for the elevators? That you may want to ask council to consider that, but to do that through another source other than a GO. And for the circulation room, the same?
To go back to our visit to the library, the elevator was a big concern for me because of the way it's impacted by this SB 412 compliance. If all adult stuff is going to be upstairs, a lot of people are not stair worthy. If you only have one small, old, frequently breaking down elevator, those just don't go together.
Right,
So
right.
to me, you've got to be sure that the elevators get done.
You have to stay ADA
Well,
compliant.
and if we're already moving 7.6 million out of this for the 412 compliance, another million for the elevator on top of that would not be that much of a difference.
Okay.
Leave it in the bond.
Move it to the same scale as the 412 compliance.
So you're up to 8.4 you're moving over?
Yeah, 8.4 basically.
Clarify, what would you recommend we move out of from the bond on the library?
So if you look at the screen, so for survey number 1, all 3 of these different scopes of work for the library, they would remain non-GO. They would remain recommended by the committee, but not that we would put this on the ballot for voters. That the committee would still make a recommendation to City Council, and that they would ask that City Council consider COs, reserves, value engineering, et cetera, in order to get the circulation room, the SB 412 compliance, and the elevators done. So we're back to just the community room being on the GO. Correct. Being on the ballot.
Because it seems like
What about that
community
finish out
room
of
is
that upstairs
the,
area?
it's the big ticket item, right? So
That
that's
would be part of
the risk you run is that
Mhm.
not being accepted by the voters.
Right.
And you don't want to punish, I mean, there's, the other things seem Or necessary, right?
It's also the most option.
Now this, taking these
Yeah.
ones out,
Yeah.
then council has to approve them. But they don't have to have citizen approval.
Correct.
And Brianne, you're gonna have to sell it.
Well, I think we have to sell it too as a group. Our recommendation is, these things are needed. Use a different alternative method, because it's one of it, part of it's crisis, some of it's state
Because
statute
stuff
to
we
get
have to
done,
do,
And the
yeah.
costs.
and the need.
Yeah.
That circulation room, oh my gosh, 200,000 you said where it was? 200,000 for the circulation room of this? How much was the dollar?
Oh, no, 735.
So the circulation room?
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Okay.
200,000 for terrace.
Still,
What is,
it'll get you in the 21st century.
But then would that be another, like a separate form of taxation then?
No, same
It's-
dollars paid for.
that's not what it says on here.
It depends on how it's funded. It depends on how it's funded.
What you risk is.
Is everything contingent on the extension being put on the library?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure if that was.
Susie, on the page from today, it says 790,000.
So it's gone up from 600,000 to 700.
So we wanted to make sure that we included all of the architectural costs, all of the inflationary costs, so that we had a firm number where we weren't still trying to factor in those things as a separate, line item.
So I brought up the parking before on the expansion, and it still bothers me. Are we going to have to, if we're going to 300 capacity, are we going to have to increase the number of handicap accessible parking spots?
No, we talked with the architect to make sure everything was ADA compliant, and also in terms of state law regarding parking spaces, and we are fine. Thank you for asking.
Even if we expand it?
That was what the design firm told us. That was because Chris, the facilities director, had a lot of questions around that. That was one of the questions he pushed quite a bit on, and he said, and the architectural design firm that we worked with that did the estimate of probable cost said that we had enough parking spaces.
Well, what about the bathrooms? Wasn't there something?
So we do have to, for the community room expansion, we will have to add, to be ADA compliant, we'll have to add, and legally compliant, we have to add more bathrooms and more ADA bathrooms. But that's included in
In
the
the
cost
overall.
of the community room expansion.
With parking, they're probably counting the rec center overflow as overflow parking.
They do.
Because they've had to do that before.
Yeah, we're each other's overflow now.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to ask about.
Okay.
It's not that much farther. I'm not opposed to the fact that that's the overflow. There's not enough parking down there already, and then when you go to this, it's really going to be out of control. And then if you go to the other far side, the north side of the rec center to do parking, there's no good way to get there to the library. There's just not. It's not lighted. The sidewalk doesn't go all the way down there. You're dodging traffic. You've got your dumpsters down there. They're nearly always doing work in the pool. There's equipment over there with chemicals for the pool and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's no good way to get from A to B, and our handicap will be down there, that's good, but we're gonna have some people that don't qualify for handicap that still don't have, can walk down that hill, dodge traffic, and all those different elevations to get to the building. I don't think it's good right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying. Where we get most of the complaints really is out over on the Grand Hall Senior Center side. That's where we need more parking for that. We don't usually get complaints from the library patrons unless we're having an event at the Grand Hall where there's more people parking back there. Because what we do, when there's a city event, the city staff usually parks in the library side and goes in the back because we know you can do that, but that way it frees up spaces up front. But anyways, so that's really, so I don't know the library, but that's something as we get into design we can continue to talk about. Yeah.
What's the
If
total
it's
figure of
approved.
that blue column there?
The on this part, yeah.
7 million.
Yeah,
give or take.
it's
Sorry, I'm flipping to find the sheet that has the.
It's slide 32 of today's handout.
And you're just talking about the library?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 9.4.
Yeah, because we're only doing 7.6 out of the 20.
We got 20.2 million minus those under general obligation
Yeah,
bonds?
10.7 is the community room expansion.
10?
10.7.
10.7.
That's all that we say to vote on, then we get to
Yeah, because basically it's half and half.
It's about half, yeah. The
So
circulation.
include 10.7
In
in the jail, in the
yeah.
community room, and then the rest recommended council to do a
Yeah.
certificate of obligation because of compliance issues and urgency.
So because I can't resist asking, is there any interest in adding more money to streets? Or are you just wanting to reduce the amount of the GO? I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
You should have the same debt. You should
Yeah,
have
it's
the
the
same
same debt, so I would say we stay where we're at.
Okay.
I think we're pushing the limit if we try to suck up that money into more streets.
Okay. With the record show, I asked the question.
Anybody opposed to 11 million for the library to vote?
And the rest go to certificate of obligation
Is anyone opposed?
for left, you don't want to split it up?
I don't want to spend a penny.
Oh,
On the library? On the library?
okay.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, my.
Anyone else? So their consensus that we'll have 11 million on the general obligation bonds to recommend to council, but say these other projects added up to whatever they are, do them because of urgency and compliance issues with certificates of obligation. That'd be part of our recommendation. -1. Okay?
Majority rules, yeah.
Okay.
So that total would be 146 million, around there, for the GO, for the propositions to go on the ballot, 146 million. Yeah, I mean, obviously taking 10 million away.
Sure. Okay, all right, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. And one of the things I am going to reference, so at your place within your set of paper behind the presentation and survey results, you have a copy of the voter guide from the November 2020 bond election. And this is what it looks like. It's several pages long, so it's just at your place as one of the handouts. So you've got a stack of handouts. It's going to be about halfway through in the very back. Okay, so Paulette mentioned it earlier, and I want to make sure that we point out in the last election, there was a voter guide put together. It's several pages long. It walks through what projects were being proposed, and it also provides a lot of really specific detail about what the impact would be to the tax rate. And so there's a whole page dedicated to financial information. We're going to hone in on that bottom cell that's talking about the estimated maximum annual increase in taxes based on a homestead residential property at a value of $100,000. It was at that time projected to be 0. Okay, and we looked at tax rates already as a group. We're going to do it again, but yes, our tax rate has fallen since that time. So turns out staff was right. We did not have a tax increase. It does also include in here a lot of assumptions. So that we would issue over a 5-year period of time. So it was a 5-year bond. Also that we would have interest rates that would be somewhere between 3.5% and 5%. We did a little better than that on most of the issuances. And also that the city would have 3% increase in our estimated future appraised values. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember in terms of what the city was assuming at that time. And also remember that bond was for less than $50 million. Okay, remember that number too as we're kind of going through some of the details. So there are a few things that we want to sort of make sure everybody's on the same page about what has changed since we did the bond election. So the first thing is our property tax rate is 8 cents lower, 8.7 cents lower than it was at that time. So a lower tax rate means you've got lower capacity for revenue, right? Because your revenue is going to be values times tax rate. So we've compressed it down 8.7 cents. The other thing is new construction at that time was 70 million more. The value of new construction was 70 million more in 2021 than it was in 2025. So that was new value that hit the tax roll in 1 year that we could use to smooth out what the impact was going to be to pay back that debt. The bond that we're talking about, if we did go to the 155, if we did that, well, it's over 100 million more than what that bond was at that time, right? We were less than 50 million on that bond issuance. We have had over 1,000 more properties since that time become exempt because of the senior exemption. Remember, we talked last time about how we've been trending on that senior exemption. 1,000 more properties have become exempt. And as we talked about last time, not only is that $36,000 worth of value per home, but also creates a cap. So folks living in that property, as long as they're still eligible for that cap and for that exemption, aren't going to pay any more, regardless of values or tax rates. The dollar amount itself is capped. If you take that $36,000 per home and you multiply that by the 1,300 homes that are new to that exemption, we've had about 47 million fall off the tax roll in assessed value because of that exemption. Does that make sense? We had it in 21, and when we look at 25, we don't have that value anymore from those homes. We also have had external policy changes in exemptions and appraisals that are compressing the values. Not what we decided, not what our council decided, not what anyone in this room decided. There are some external compression things that are happening within our tax rate that also makes depending on future growth to be harder and less predictable. So let's walk through one of those. I asked our economic development director to help me understand what are we anticipating in new construction. January 1st is sort of that snapshot time that TAD is going to look at to do appraised values for next fiscal year. So what came on the roll from January 1 of 25 versus January 1 of 26. One thing we have to remember, there will be no reappraisals for residential properties until 27. That includes home sale changes. If I sold my house, and I've been there, let's say I've been in my house 20 years and I sold it, and I sold that thing for $1 million more than I bought it for, God willing, right? That isn't going to change the value of the home on the tax roll. TAD has told us they're not going to use sales as any sort of demonstration of a value change. So regardless of what happens in the actual market on gains and losses on property, that is not going to be factored in. The other thing is the chief appraiser has to have clear and compelling evidence for any increases above 5% on all properties, not just residential, all properties. Again, sales prices of home are not going to be considered for the purpose of values. We talked last time about the new law that is going into effect that will happen, that'll hit our roll for next year, which is the business personal property exemptions. We already talked about what that amount is. That'll be a $60 million loss to our overall taxable values next year that we have today. New construction values, when we look at residential, we pull permits, we've looked at the timing of new businesses, we've looked at new businesses that have opened, and we've been busy. A lot has happened. We've certainly added a lot of value to the community. That net value is an increase of about $65.5 million. So when we do our pluses and minuses, we're looking at a net increase of about $5.5 million. Yes, sir.
What is the value of the sales tax annually?
The value of the sales tax annually is about 20 million between three different funds though. Our voters have allocated a portion towards the general fund, a portion towards police, and a portion towards parks. Yes, sir.
Is the commercial property rate appraisal on the same schedule as residential property?
So no, TAD determined that just residential properties would be sort of frozen from 24 to 27, but the cap of 5% that the TAD board has put in place, that is going to cover commercial, and also because the BPP exemption happens, that only affects commercial. So there are some built-in caps, essentially, by policy that are happening for commercial properties.
So apartment reappraisal falls into the commercial property?
It does. It does. Mm-hmm. It does. Mm-hmm. So when we are talking about the potential of $155 million in a bond, I know we're going to back off of that. Our number is going to be a little lower than that. But for all intents and purposes, let's just say if the committee wanted to propose that, that is going to be about $4 million in new annual debt payments if it was all going forward and it was all approved, so on and so forth. When we do the backwards math, we take our tax rate, we look at how much that is in new revenue payment, new revenue we'd have to collect to make that new payment in 1 year. That's an increase of about $932 million in taxable value. That would need to hit our roll for that to be net zero. I wish my math friend was here so we could talk about all of this together. But that would be about a 12% increase in our certified value. Well, here's a historical view of what's happened with our taxable value for new construction. Okay, this is just new construction that we're going to focus on for this purpose. When we went to the voters in November of 2020 and had a bond election, you can see where we were. This is showing you one column is the year, the taxable value, and then what does that change compared to the previous year? Again, the assumption was that we were going to have about 3% increase every year. Man, look what happened in 21. Let's just say it was more than 3%, right? And we were really close in 21 and 22 to about 170 million. Our currently adopted fiscal year budget had a total in new construction of about 100 million. So we went from 171 in 22 down to 100 million in 25, and we're expecting in 26 for that to be at 65.
And how much more new construction can even happen with this?
Well, that is the great debate, right? So we're about 95% built out. We redevelop some properties, so sometimes the question isn't what's built versus what's vacant. Sometimes the question is what can be redeveloped, what could be upscaled from what it is today.
And that's still considered new construction then?
Yes. So it generally speaking, it would be considered new construction depending on what they do. If there is physical construction happening, yes, then that changes the value. It's subject to reappraisal. They look at the value of those improvements, et cetera. But if you're just, like for like sort of moving in and there's not really a tangible construction difference, that isn't going to net on the property tax side. It may not net a big change. So when we look at these trends and when we look at what has happened, it is one of the reasons why the past may not be the best predictor of the future. So as staff, we have to consider what has changed and no longer applies to our estimations. I wish that we had 170 million hitting the tax roll in one calendar year, but the truth is for next year, we know that that isn't going to happen. We used to also be able to count on existing properties growing in value, right? Because when in that scenario, you've lived in that house for a long time, perhaps your value has gone up over time. If you were to sell that home or refinance that home or whatever case may be, you've kind of got that built-in equity. Well, Tad is saying that they're not going to factor in, those sort of growths within existing properties. So really new construction is what we really need to look for to anticipate big increases. This is the same information just shown a different way for those who like a graph instead of a numerical chart. This just kind of highlights again what we've seen over time and that new construction, those new construction values since the last time we did a GO election. And at the same time, our property tax rates have fallen. So this is a similar slide to what I showed you last time. Last time we went from 2015 all the way forward. I really want to focus in on when the committee was meeting in 2019 and they were discussing having a bond election, what was the tax rate then versus what is the tax rate now? And so you can see how much the tax rate has fallen over that time. There is a correlation between your values and your rate. And so that's all this chart is trying to show you here is when we have that new construction values going up, we tend to see our property tax rate going down over time. So rather than trying to predict everything that may happen from a certified value standpoint for the purpose of the committee, I'm going to take back the feedback that you all have given us. We're all going to reconvene back with, okay, what is the dollar amount that you all have settled out on? What is it that you want us to really have something to react to? But the other thing is Kat is going to provide us with a preliminary report for 26. We're going to get that at the end of April. That information is going to include in there any new exemptions that have hit residential properties. It's going to have in there new construction information. It's going to include minerals, commercial, industrial, the new BPP exemptions, all of those things will be on that estimated information. We're going to absorb that so we can bring it back to you all and give you updated numbers about taxable value based on that information. So we know what we know, but we're still working with estimates. We're going to get the information from TAD and we'll bring that back to you. But that we will not have until the very end of April. So we'll be in May before we'll have that updated information. But as soon as we have that, we will bring it to you. Do we have any questions about this section before we move on?
That's the first time I've heard that TAD's not going, even if property transfers, they don't assign a new appraisal to it.
So TAD had a taxing entity meeting and they sent out notes. We had a staffer who went, and we also received notes from our chief appraiser that clarified the question of how do they treat home sales when we're in this period of non-appraisal. And they have clarified that they are not using sales price as a determination of value. That is, they're not doing that.
So, and that meeting just happened last week, so that's why you're just now hearing about it. So the school district would have just found out that information. Everybody, all the taxing entities just found out that information last week.
Because used to, whenever property transferred, that's when they had the opportunity to
Yes.
get it to a current value.
Correct.
Not the sales price. It never got to the sales price because in Texas, those aren't divulged. You know, the closing documents aren't divulged in the county records and like that. But still, they got it to more current.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say hypothetically, so if someone bought my house, they're gonna get it at the frozen seniors over 65 exemption rate?
Probably not, because what happens on the frozen properties is whenever they reappraise, your value is still reappraised. But what they do is they do a calculation
Right.
to make it where your tax bill doesn't go up. So my assumption is, and again, it's an assumption because I don't know. I mean, they just told us last week that sales price is not market value. I don't know what that means. But my assumption would be their taxable they would get taxed on the latest appraised value.
So the exemptions go with the person, not the property.
Agreed.
So once the person is no longer there to be eligible for the exemption, then that exemption goes away. And so that difference could be then subject to taxation, whereas before it was not. And so then you can see a difference where the taxable might catch up with market, but the value of the property itself is not being reappraised at that time.
Go back to original comment though, projections, you showed that you didn't change any of the property values.
Mm-hmm.
In our scope, we talked about 1 or 2 meetings ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they would be flat.
You did flat.
Correct. And so we are going to.
That's ultra conservative, which is good. That's the worst, and that's perfect.
And so we will see if our preliminary values come in based on what we're projecting or something different. And once we have that information, we'll come back to the committee and we'll talk more about that.
So what we would plan to do your next meeting is not until March 31st because this one got moved up. So March 31st, we would come back and bring you recommendations as far as what would those different propositions look like potentially based on your feedback through the surveys and then tonight. And then what we would then do is start to factor in any value information that we're getting from TAD as you go through your April meetings. You're not scheduled to present your recommendations. I mean, you could present as late as the end of June, but they're not expecting it from you until at least, the end of May, beginning of June. So you've got some time, so I don't want anybody to panic. So what I do want you to do, though, is go away from this meeting and think about all this, review your materials, even start to talk to some of your friends, neighbors, family about their thoughts about some of these things. And then we can interject that feedback as we continue our discussion.
Part of what the committee part of the work of this committee is also to talk about how you all think that information should be proposed to voters in propositions. And we really need to look at the sort of projects that are related to one another. Remember, though, the propositions allow for individual or combined voting, meaning the library, for example, if you put all the library improvements together, they're all going to live and die together, right? It's either all up or all down if they're all combined into single propositions, but it also allows for a pass or fail as a standalone item. So if you do them as a separate proposition, then each person, each prop, if you will, is kind of standing on its own, and it also allows people to match the intentions for consideration. And so these are not recommendations. These are just some food for thought in terms of different ways that you all could look at approaching how to do propositions. So the first one is what I'm going to call condensed projects. So you're just proposing 4 big umbrellas. Fire stations are together, streets are together, service center, and then full library expansion, and that's it. All the things are together. Again, we know that these numbers changed based on our conversations today, but this was based on if it was going to be at that 155 level. This is what I'll call expanded projects. So if you wanted to break everything apart and say, nope, let's let every single project be on its own. And so instead of 4 projects, that looks like 8 separate projects. So you can see the fire stations are separate. Streets are together, but theoretically streets could be apart. In the service center, and then each of the library projects could be their own proposition. We know that we're not going with all 4 versions of this, but that is an option. And then there's almost sort of like the combined option. To what extent would you want to do, some together, some apart? How many propositions is that? So on and so forth. So we don't have to resolve this today, but I do want to put in your mind that these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have as a committee, so that before you're proposing recommendations to the city council, that you've considered what do you think really needs to be grouped together, what do you really think needs to be apart. Yes, ma'am.
Historically, those that have been passed, or even if it matters, how has it been grouped, right? Do people like to see it grouped? Does this become too much? Kind of historically, when was worked out?
So we have put like things together. So streets would go as one prop. The service center would go as one prop. Library would go as one prop. But there's an argument to be made if there's ever anything you worry about for any reason, you don't want it to all sink or swim together. And, in the library case, we're only going to look for the community room, so it's a moot point. But if there were several different possible options for the library, you may want to say, everyone may not think that one is important, but they may think the other is important. If we put them together, we take the risk that people will feel like it's too much, and they'll vote the whole thing down. And if we had broken it apart, they may have told us their priorities.
I have one more question. Sure. Okay. And so percentage of voters, right? There was conversations about older generations, all these things. For what's the percentage of voters that may be older, where this, it makes sense, right? Where the younger generations or families or what have you, when it becomes too much, is that something that we should keep in mind? How people in North Richland Hills are receiving information? Is that
So there will, yes, I guess is a short answer, but it won't necessarily be age alone, right? So the community has a lot of various ways that they touch the city. Of course, everybody drives on streets, but people are engaging with different parts of the city and city services in such different ways. Part of the work of the committee will be to consider, from a messaging, marketing, outreach perspective, what are going to be the best ways to connect with people who are going to be the most interested, who need to have some outreach, who need to have some education, so on and so forth about the propositions. Any given election has a different turnout, and that can be based on lots of factors. And so because we are looking at November of 26, big turnout time, right? Big turnout time. So a lot of people will be motivated to vote, whether they're thinking about this election or something else in November.
But we're ultimately making a recommendation to council, who recommends to put it on the ballot. And the fact that we're going to have so many people turn out to vote in November, because it will be a good time to vote, we're giving the voters the opportunity to decide these things. We're just deciding what to put on the ballot for them to decide, and all of us that will vote.
Correct. Yes, sir.
I'm just going out of thought. I'm concerned about the service center being thought. People don't know what that is. And can we combine that with streets? Because without the service center, we have no streets, right?
I would not recommend.
Well, and I don't know that that would pass legal review. So that was the thing I was going to ask. So not only then you all or the council decide, the council ultimately decides the proposition language, but you all make a recommendation to them. But we have to have it reviewed by legal because the law requires us to create enough separation between ballots that it's clear what's in it and what's not. And so that would be my concern there because that's a good point. I mean, you have to have the service center to do streets, but we also, in that service center recommendation, is included parks and rec operations as well. So it's not just public works operations, but that's a good point. We can also ask that question of our legal counsel to see would that be a possibility? Yeah.
I think another thing, I was having exactly the same thought, and it seems to me the term service center is going to be, no one's going to know what that means. If you can completely eliminate that term and get it back to sewers, water,
right,
whatever is in it, get it in the title.
Yeah.
So people know what it is and they feel like it affects them.
Exactly. And for the purposes of this, we're calling it service center, but that would be the work of both when we do an education campaign and when y'all create your advocacy committee to change it into what it is. And so at that point we would come up with what is the educational and advocacy information, what's the best thing to call that so people know what it is. Yes, we're using service center as a plug, and I know y'all know what it is now because you've seen it, but most people don't. Yeah.
I think the risk we take by putting the service center in with the streets is that if it fails, then guess what? We don't get any streets.
And you can't ask for it again for a while.
I know this will come, this language will come later, and it's in how we spread it. I'm always playing devil as advocate what people are going to say about, well, why do you want it? Why do you need a new service center? Well, obvious, we know why. But anticipating the questions, well, but they're out in the field. Why do they need something over there? Well, that's where all the materials are stored. That's where all the fleet is stored. That's where they get their gas. And I know the general public doesn't recognize that.
Right.
It's not in our thought process on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to make sure that's how we present it, for sure. I'll take them on a tour.
I'll open the door for you.
Okay. I'm serious.
So one more thing, looking at that May, June, you saw the turnout yesterday. That was a big turnout. It's gonna be a big turnout in November. But we have election in May also, so that, like you were talking about, talk to your friends, your family, neighbors, all that stuff. Get them understanding what's coming up. But May would be a great time to target the polling centers and start giving everybody a heads up on what's coming up. But you also have to be informed. You can't just say we're throwing in a bond package for this amount and it'll scare them.
My only concern with that would be I know the school has a bond election that's going to happen in May, and I don't want people to get confused with that and the schools. That would be my only concern of doing that.
We won't have the final TAD numbers till May gets here.
Yeah.
But the bond is going to be presented in November regardless. So.
True. But the council probably hadn't called the election yet.
They would not have
Determine
called
the
it.
final number.
Yeah.
But there would be enough time, to create the advocacy committee can create their campaign. We'll have enough time to put our educational information. So if the council calls the election, and they have to call it by August, the first meeting in August. But if they call it earlier, so if y'all presented your information, let's say last meeting in May or first meeting in June, and they decide to call the election at the second meeting in June, then that campaign can begin right away so that people are aware. And it would include all these things you're talking about where people, y'all have suggested, and I think it's good suggestions, Facebook, social media, town hall meetings, all those types of things that would take place in that time frame between June and the November election.
If we get the TAD numbers at our meeting in May, I'm looking at May the 5th or 19th, we have scheduled. If we come to the conclusion the numbers are all finalized, there's no reason we couldn't make that full recommendation to council right after that, right? We don't have to wait.
Right, it could be the second.
Get the numbers in and everything's...
Yeah.
Then we could shift gears into advocacy.
Gives you more time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So as a reminder, in terms of our timelines, what you see on your screen is very big picture for the work of the committee itself leading up to the November election. But one of the things we also want to remind the committee of is while we are working with you all as the Capital Program Advisory Committee, and you all are looking to make recommendations to council, there's sort of the advocacy, and then there's what we're doing together as a group. And so we want to just provide a little bit of information about sort of what's the difference between the advocacy piece and what it is that we're all doing together as a group. And so I'm going to hope that this works, but this is an example from another city of how they have done some recent educational information from the city.
Hi, Grand Prairie voters. You've probably heard about a GO bond program in the upcoming May 2nd city election. But what exactly is that, and what does it mean for you? We're here to explain. A general obligation bond is a way for the city to pay for big projects over time instead of paying for everything all at once, kind of like financing a major purchase. It spreads the cost out over several years instead of paying for everything up front. This year, you'll see 3 separate propositions on the ballot, and you can vote on each one individually. Proposition A asks you to vote yes or no on $209.5 million for non-residential street improvements across Grand Prairie. Proposition B asks you to vote yes or no on $78.5 million to fund public safety resources in the southern part of Grand Prairie and upgrade existing public safety assets in the city. And Proposition C asks you to vote yes or no on $39 million for parks and recreation facilities, like a multi-purpose center, a pickleball complex, public artwork, and a botanical garden. If the propositions are approved, the city will issue bonds over time to fund the projects. If they are not approved, some projects may be delayed, scaled back, or reprioritized based on available funding. Remember, you can vote on each proposition individually because they cover different kinds of projects and have different tax impacts. The following numbers represent the estimated annual tax impact on a home with an appraised value of $100,000. $24.99 per year for Proposition A, which covers street projects. $9.36 per year for Proposition B, which covers public safety projects. And $4.65 per year for Proposition C, which covers parks and recreation projects. To learn more, visit gptx.org/bond election 2026 or attend an upcoming public information session. Additional details are on the city website, www.gptx.org.
So notice that the program did not say vote yes, right? It provided information, it provided numbers, it provided data, facts, but it was net neutral on sort of that advocacy work, if you will. There's no signage in the yard on it, it's really just providing information to the community. Yes, sir.
$100,000 houses in Grand Prairie?
I can't answer on behalf of the city of Grand Prairie. What I can say though is a lot of times, and frankly, in our voter guide, we did the same thing. We said 100,000, and the reason you do that, the reason a lot of places do that is because the math is easy. For every $100,000 in value, the number carries. So everyone has a different value, but if you give someone a number that they can easily understand, then it just makes it easier for them to scale that according to what that means for them. Same for businesses. So it is a bit of a standard number. In some of our taxation disclosures, the state requires we use $100,000 value for a home as well. So it's just kind of easy math for people to do when you're talking taxes. Yes, sir.
I love the way the video was put together. My question is where would the average citizen view that video from? The information doesn't come to the end of the video, tune into our website here. So where would the average citizen of North Richland Hills view that video?
So we aren't to the point yet of putting together a full marketing plan or an education plan as a city, but this would be information that we could push out all kinds of ways. Social media, through our website. I mean, we could definitely push information out where they're not having to come to us to find it, or we can sort of, drop it in places where people are going to be. Remember, this is also happening around a time of year where the city is talking about our budget, and we're doing town hall meetings, and we're doing budget road shows, and we're having other touch with the community, all kinds of events, and so on and so forth. So there's touch with the community that isn't just our website, where we can certainly make sure that any sort of information about the projects would be something that would be circulated. So in terms of the committee's work, so again, there's the citizen group that you all officially are as you've been appointed by the city council, and then there's the advocacy piece. And so we just kind of want to make sure that we're keeping you guys abreast of sort of what's the difference, sort of what's the line between the two. And so an advocacy committee is also citizen-led that promotes the passage of a bond measure. I can't promote the passage, I can provide facts, but an advocacy committee can do that sort of work. It's done by, educating the public, organizing a campaign, and highlighting project benefits. Really, the primary purpose is to advocate for the approval of a bond proposal, often by focusing on community benefits. And key roles here, number 1 is going to be public education, number 2 is going to be coordination, and then number 3 is going to be on campaigning itself. And so as a group, you all may want to call your own meetings over the next several months in parallel with the work that is happening formally with the CPAC committee, so that you all can also be engaged in that process. And so whether it's project discussions, verbiage, marketing, strategies, approach, etc., that is work that you all would be doing separate from our time together and our formal meetings. We, the city, cannot spend dollars advocating for bond approval. So there is a bit of a separation between that work. Okay?
Did I catch in their video that instead of saying service center, they just put it under parks and recreation?
I didn't think they were doing a building. I thought.
Yeah, they're doing an additional, park facilities and amenities. So I think it's an additional rec center or an expansion of their rec center. And then, as they mentioned, pickleball, which makes me laugh because they're just going to get a lot of votes alone on they put pickleball in there, so the voters are going to approve it. yeah, there's an idea. There's an idea. Yes.
Friday night pickleball.
It can be part of our wellness program of the city. Yeah.
Resident wellness.
Okay, any further questions of staff?
Where do we meet in March, the last meeting?
We'll be back in the community room at City Hall for the March 31st meeting.
Okay.
So we'll have a little bit of time between now and our next meeting.
Okay. Item 9, public comments, an opportunity for citizens to address the 2025 Capital Program Advisory Committee on matters which are scheduled on this agenda for consideration by the committee, but not scheduled as a public hearing. In order to address the 2025 Capital Program Advisory Committee during public comments, a public meeting appearance card must be completed and presented to the recording secretary prior to the start of the 2025 Capital Program Advisory Committee meeting. No cards? Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate and thank you for your commitment and dedication to the 2025 Capital Program Advisory Committee. Remember that we're looking to provide our residents with the utmost best quality of life amenities, not just for our generations, but generations to come. I ask that you please be open and consider what is best for all of our community. Thank you all so much for being here, and see you at the end of the month.